the person in charge will approve it. And after that, you can proceed with the activity that was not covered under your WMS framework or required deviation. Only after approval can you continue this work. You can only proceed after getting the approval. After work approval, you can continue. For this job, application of stricter standards and requirements means that if we have to structure the requirements or standards, we have to strengthen them. Then what should be our requirements for them? The first point will be that WMS standards set out minimum guidelines that must be followed across all group companies. In requirements are minimum guidelines for adding control measures, dynamic risk assessment, and deviations from WMS framework as needed. Minimum guidelines must be strictly followed. So the word minimum guidelines is used because the minimum guidelines have been set for those who are standards, and they have to be strictly followed in all education group compliance. Next comes the second point, that the Edge Group Company Reserve is directed to enforce the structural guidelines. Every company that is a group company, whether it is ADNOC or gas company, has the duty to strictly follow its own rules and regulations. All approved deviations will be approved, after which additional shell will be issued by the SVP. Tabulated in deviation additional to WMS standards approved. Add to the guidelines minimum guidelines. That should be part of your procedure. How to implement the WMS framework in emergency conditions or follow it. Emergency deviation of WMS standards are permitted. If deviation is needed, work apart from them. How will we implement it or how will we follow it? Emergency deviations from WMS standards are permitted. If you need to deviate from your standards or framework during an emergency, you can do so. Personal and property protection measures will be in place. Your people, environment, and property will not be compromised. When the emergency is under control and normal conditions return, follow all WMS standards. Your people, environment, and property will not be compromised. When the emergency is under control and normal conditions return, follow all WMS standards. When conditions return to normal, follow all WMS standards. When your condition returns to normal, you must follow all the procedures and requirements of the WMS standard profit procedures. In emergency conditions, the permit we have with the GP should be live on the device, and there should also be a hard copy. But in emergency conditions, you can work and give guidance just by watching it live on the device. Apart from that, if we talk about emergency conditions in which we had to impose some isolation, ISA imposed physical isolation and demonstrated it. But after that, until the isolation certificate is signed, we cannot continue working in a normal atmosphere or under normal conditions. We cannot go ahead. However, in emergency conditions, the ISO was there and it provided you with physical